Welcome to Allies or Enemies. I'm Jess.
And I am Sean, and today we are counting down our top 10 favorite all-time games that are just specifically for two players. So you know what? Let's do it. Number 10 is Onitama, and people on this channel have been telling us that we have to play Onitama forever, and we were lucky enough that at Essen we were supplied with a review copy. It was amongst the review copies that we got, and it really stood out. We were super impressed by it. I think we were still on the fence about whether or not we'd like it, because it is a very chess-ish game. It looks like it's going to be chess, and what happens is you've got four kind of pawns and one kind of king. They are not analogous to those on your side of the board. And then you've got two cards that show you how you can move stuff. And when you play a card that moves stuff, you have to put it kind of in the middle, and then the next turn after that, the other player is going to get that card. So whatever you play to move things, the other player is going to get that. So you can see the two moves they can do. They can see the two moves you can do, and then you've got one move that's kind of bouncing back and forth. And it's fascinating. We were way more into this game than I thought that we were going to be.
Yeah, and it definitely has to do with the card play, because it's what you want to do with the cards in front of you, but what option you're giving to your opponent, because the perfect card for you might also then put them in a good position if you give that up. So I found that really interesting, and it's different cards every time, because it comes with a stack of cards and you're only using 5 each game. So each game has felt very different just depending on which cards have been in the mix.
And that part is crazy to me too, because you look at the cards and it's okay, like a T this way. Now it's a T this way. Now it's like a T that goes up, a T that goes down, diagonal. So you think, how different are these going to be? And then you realize, you play a game where everyone's moving right all the time and you can just move a little bit left. Or you play the game where you've got the tiger, I think, that lets you jump forward. And we're both real stingy with that because that feels really powerful. Or the dragon that moves you in all different directions. But even those subtle movements, the subtle cards that only one's moving forward this time, that makes a huge difference for the game and when you're going to play that. And so there's so much strategy in this.
Yeah, it really did surprise me because it is so different from chess. I really it is only those 5 options in the game. And it looks really nice. And I really like the figures, how they have chopping hands as well.
Yes, and they look a bit like Ventress, so I can picture in my head that it's like a Star Wars game. And the rollout mat, it's got this beautiful, what is it called? The
neoprene.
It's got this beautiful neoprene mat as well that comes out, and it's in a nice weirdly shaped box, but it's a box that fits on your shelf still. But Onitama is our number 10.
Number 9 is Radlands, and Radlands is a Mad Max style blowing stuff up game, and you each start with 3 camps that you're trying to protect, and there is a stack of camps that you can choose from. So every game is going to feel very different in terms of what 3 camps you have and what their powers are. And then you have to spend water, which is a very limited resource, to be able to do anything. So you're trying to play people out to protect your camps, but also they have powers that will help you destroy the other people and the other camps. So it is just trying to damage and blow up and eventually whittle the other person's camps down until they don't have any left, and then you win.
Yeah, and this is a game that I think it took you a little while. I had to kind of win you over with my enthusiasm for this game, because first of all, I love the art. This is awesome neon pinks and blues, which I'm such a sucker for, and it looks like Borderlands, and I love all of that sort of stuff. Borderlands, Mad Max, A Boy and His Dog, anything that's in kind of a dystopian apocalyptic future where everyone's also a punk. I really enjoy that. So I was sold on this from the box cover. But the game is really good. It's a really cool and quick playing kind of aggressive tableau builder. You're building a tableau strictly to blow stuff up. And I like that dynamic.
And it is a tough decision sometimes of just to get people out to protect your camps, or to spend all of your water on one really powerful card, particularly because they have these events that like advance up at the beginning of each of your turns. So if you're putting that out, it could take a few turns before the payoff, but it's sometimes worth investing in that.
And those events can be chaos too. We were playing this, we played all of these just in like the last week to kind of remind ourselves and decide on our order for these games. And Jess played one that just destroyed all the people on both sides, like in one shot, except it left like one person, I think, on both sides. And so I'm making this whole plan and it's like, oh, but that's kind of the beauty of this game is there's so much chaos, which really feeds into the whole theme of the game. Like it feels like the theme.
Yeah, it definitely does. And that's our number 9.
Number 8 is Hive, and Hive is probably the game that I've been playing for the longest of everything on this list. What it is, it's basically bug chess. So it's this super awesome abstract game where you've got a bunch of different insects and spiders, and you're playing them really to surround the other person's bee. So you've both got a queen bee, and then you've got different bugs that do different stuff. So the ants can move really far, and the grasshoppers can hop over everything that's going on in the hive, and the spiders can move like 3, and it really confuses everyone how that works. But they all move differently and do different stuff, and it doesn't need a board or anything. It just needs these really cool Bakelite pieces that just go in this bag and clang together and have this really nice weight to them, and it's terrific.
Yeah, the pieces really do make a world difference. It is a game that you can play anywhere. This is one that we would comfortably play at a pub, because if it gets a little bit sticky, that is fine. It can just like
wash it,
wipe it off, no problem. But it is very much an abstract strategy game with like perfect information, because there is no luck involved. You both have the same critters available and you know what they do. And so it's one that works very well for people who are well matched, I'd say. When we first started playing this, because Sean had a lot more games under his belt, I just felt like it was impossible. And then kind of once we played it and I kind of got over that learning curve, and then we became well matched, it became a really tight, interesting, like strategic game with like, ooh, you use the beetle in that way. I hadn't seen that before.
Yeah, I miss those days. I miss those old days when I was like, oh good, I can win this. This is a game I can regularly win. And now those days are way behind us. And it's largely because you use totally different strategies than me too, because I'm all about the ants and I'm all about like, let's move really fast and then set up like a sneaky grasshopper at the end. And she's all about, let's climb up on top of your bee and just sit there, and then I'm going to surround you. And it's something that like I hadn't thought of, and then I just get whooped with it.
Yeah, it is fun just to try out how all the different insects move. And it's neat, there's so many different versions as well, because there's the colorful version and then there's also the pocket version.
Yeah, the mini version as well. But that is our number 8.
Our number 7 is Targi, which is a worker placement game. And the whole board is just made of cards with all of the actions along the outside, and then the things that you're collecting in terms of the goods, and then the cards that will eventually get you points are on the inside. So when you're putting your people out, you put them on the outside, and then wherever they intersect is where your tokens go for what you can do in the middle. But your decision of where to put them is going to be influenced by not only those spaces, but also maybe where you want to restrict your opponent from going to, because they can't go opposite where you are either.
Yeah, it's a really interesting, like it's so different from other worker placement games because the whole thing is just that, where do my 2 people meet? I've got one on this side and I've got, I don't know if you can see my hands, I got one on this side, I got one on this side, and then they're going to meet in the middle. But I know if Jess wants this card and she's put one here, that there's no way I'm giving her this row, because you can't face each other. So if I put one that blocks off that row, so it's like you're always kind of giving other people like their second best choice, or you're kind of trying to fake them out.
Yeah, and with the expansion, it makes it more of a full game, because I did like it before just on its own, and it comes in a nice little small box. But once you add the expansion in, it just gives it that little extra layer, I think, that makes it feel more like a full game.
Yeah, the expansion adds like a surprising amount. It's kind of the same size box, and it actually is its own standalone game as well. You don't have to have the original game, but I do think it's best with both of them smushed together. But the expansion adds like another place you can go to if you don't have any good option on the main board, and it also adds some different resources and just some wrinkles with some of the cards as well that just add like a little bit of an extra layer that isn't too much but feels like it's like exactly the right amount.
Yeah, it gives you what you want from that in terms of being a worker placement game that plays quickly but has enough depth to it. And that makes Targi our number 7.
Number 6 is Critters at War, and we've kind of owned this for years because we have had air, land, and sea for quite a while. But the World War II theme wasn't always the best fit, so I was really happy when Arcane Wonders hooked us up with a copy of Critters at War, which just takes the exact same game but makes it adorable animals who are now trying to murder each other. And Critters at War it's the same game again. So you got air, land, and sea. You got 3 different theaters of battle, and then you got 18 cards. You shuffle those up. You've got 6 each, and 6 of them are out of the round. And you're playing those cards down to the different theaters. They match. Some of them are air, some of them are land, some of them are sea. You're playing them down to the different theaters, and they've all got different powers and different like numerical values on them. But the cool thing is at any time you can surrender. You can decide to give up. I'm not going to win this. And that means that your opponent isn't going to win as much from you if you give up in like the second or third round. But if you stick it out, you've got a chance to win quite a bit more, or for them to win quite a bit more. And the whole game only goes to like 12 points. So it's like 3-4 rounds, maybe at most. But I really like that kind of gambling by when do I give up.
Yeah, definitely. And that is such a core aspect because part of deciding whether to give up or not is what cards you think your opponent has, but you don't know because some of the cards aren't even in the game. And so deciding what cards you're going to play from your end will factor into that too. Because if I have a 6, I might wait thinking that you think you have a chance of winning, even though, but so my 6 is waiting there being like, haha, I'm going to get him so he sticks it out and isn't going to pull out and then play like my strong cards right at the end. But that can be tough too. So just between the powers of the cards and the decision of when to pull out, it's always like so tense about what to do when.
Yeah, and it's a really quick, really solid game. It reminds me in a lot of ways of Marvel Snap, although this predates Marvel Snap. But like Marvel Snap, you've got the 3 different places that you're fighting at. You've got the cards with a different power. You can pull out and you'll lose less. Like all of that stuff. I feel like the Marvel Snap people must have played this. Also, if you can't tell, I really like Marvel Snap. I play a lot of Marvel Snap. But the really cool thing, I think, is the second. It's kind of an expansion. It's kind of like Targi. It's kind of a second version of the same game. And for Critters at War, it's called Flies, Lies, and Supplies. It's got a different name if you've got the original Air, Land, and Sea version. But I think that one bumps it up like even a little bit more because it's more like kind of intrigue and even more trickiness.
Yeah, I just like the theme overall too of it being about like intelligence and spying instead of tanks. But because one of the things it adds is being able to add what they call supplies. So it adds additional tokens to the different theaters, and having those additional tokens come into play, I think does lead to some like harder decisions of, again, when to pull out and what might give you the edge.
Yeah, knowing when to hold them and when to fold them. And you can mush those 2 expansions together as well to have like a super game. I actually prefer just the 3 because I think part of the fun is the quickness. But you know, we've done it a couple times and it's interesting to do. And that is our number 6.
Our number 5 is Jaipur, which is a set collection card game with camels. And you are collecting these different colors of cards, and the different colors represent different goods available in the market. So once you have a set, you can exchange it for various poker chips And the poker chips look great. But there is a race because the higher value chips are at the front, meaning whoever exchanges it first gets to use those chips. But there is an incentive to hold on for a bit to be able to get a bigger set and get a bonus if you play larger sets.
Yeah, that's the really cool thing in this, is that you want to race to get those high point tokens, especially for like the higher value goods, but you really want to save up because you want to spend 5 at a time, because those bonus cards are worth a ton, or can be, because those are also a little bit random. And so it's really like you're trying to read what your opponent has, and you can see what they're taking. So you've got a pretty good sense of what they've got in their hand. And so it's like, I don't want to leave things, but also I want to get things. And then you got your camels you're trading. It's like, it's a simple game, but there's like a lot of bits to it.
Yeah, there definitely is. And the camels, I think, is one of my favorite parts because you're able to exchange cards you have with the market. So if the market row is really good, the camels can come in handy for being able to put them in there and get all of the good cards. But if somebody takes all of the camels, that means then the market becomes available for the next person, and you never know what options you're opening up for them.
Yeah, because you can take like one normal card or all of the camels. And the camels don't go in your hand, so they don't clog up and fill your hand. The camels are like these cool kind of like filler cards that you can use to replace cards quickly. But that you, there's also like a collecting up the camels, like you get points for having the most camels, which I certainly overestimated for the first bunch of games, and because I really like the camels. But the real play, I think, is in that market, in that like, do I go quick or do I wait a little bit? And it's a best 2 out of 3 as well. So if you really mess up the first one, you still got 2 more shots at it, and it goes to like the third game with us. Almost every time.
I was going to say, it is quite rare that a person wins 2 in a row. It is often down to the wire. So this is a competitive game of Jaipur we always have. And it's our number 5.
Number 4 is Star Wars Rebellion. And Star Wars Rebellion is the best Star Wars game by a country parsec. It is just terrific. It is so Star Wars. Star Wars Rebellion is this game where one person is the Empire and one person is the Rebellion. One person's the Rebels. And the Empire is just trying to find the Rebel base and crush it. And that's their whole job. They got way more people out on the board. You got this big map of the galaxy and you got all these ships everywhere on it. And the Rebels start off with like a few ships on one planet and then a hidden base somewhere else, and just like hoping that the Empire doesn't get them. And they gotta like duck and weave. They gotta finish these little missions so that they can tighten up the time, because they win if the time runs out. So if they can just run out the clock and stay around long enough that they can, spread hope throughout the galaxy, then they win. And it's such a fun like cat and mouse game.
And I thought at first it would be very just about combat, but it's interesting that it's more than that. And I think they do a really good job with the various leaders that you have, as well as mission cards. So you are definitely moving your fleets and you are attacking each other and you are fighting each other. But you're also trying to get loyalty in all of the different systems. You're trying to thwart each other's plans. And I think all of that makes it way more interesting than if it was just like a combat heavy with slightly asymmetric roles.
Yeah, you kind of have like a few big battles throughout the thing. You'll have like a few little skirmishes, and then you'll have like 4 or 5 like big battles, and usually building up to one. But yeah, the majority of the game is playing these little mission cards where like the Empire is trying to capture the Rebels, or the Rebels, like Luke's going to Dagobah to learn from Yoda and turn into Jedi Luke, or you're just doing all these different little like sneaky things. And that part's even better with the expansion, and the combat's better as well. So the expansion brings in all the stuff from Rogue One. And so then you've got like Baze Malbus like taking out a bunch of stormtroopers, and like Jyn Erso doing some like sneaky stuff over here, and Cassian and Chirrut Imwe and everybody. I could just say Star Wars names all day long, but it adds even more, and it makes the battles like a little bit smoother, a little bit quicker, and just a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, we have only played with the expansion ever since we got it. So I don't even remember how it used to play. And there is just this constant tension of what are you going to do? What are you setting up for? Who do I need to leave behind to try and stop you? And you have done that to me where you've had people on mission cards and like, okay, I won't use these people because I want to make sure they can stop whatever sneaky thing you have going on over here. And then you're like, no, I'm not going to use them.
It's that outthinking each other and that like outfoxing each other and that back and forth. It's really Star Warsy and so many awesome. I'm usually not a sucker for minis. In fact, I'm usually specifically not. But come on, when there's Star Wars minis, when you got a bunch of AT-ATs, you got like 3 Death Stars in this box. You've got all sorts of awesome stuff, and I just feel like a kid in a toy store playing with my Star Wars toys.
Our number 3 is Seven Wonders Duel, which is a super interesting 2-player drafting game. And how they made it work for 2 players is all of the cards that you're drafting are laid out into this like pyramid-like structure. And you only have usually about like half the information visible because half of them are flipped over. So when you take a card, which you do on your turn, you are then opening up options for your opponent. So you're always debating what card you want, but also what does that mean that your opponent can then take, which works so well for drafting at 2 players.
Yeah, it was an amazing game when this first came out, because I think this maybe was the first duel game. So this was like back in like the long ago, all there was regular Seven Wonders, and that only played really for like 4 or 5, like up to 7 players. But it was really good, and a lot of people wanted to take that and be able to play it in a 2-player game. And it like blows my mind they're able to take this game that was so, where like the draft and pass was so intrinsic to it and really needed a lot of players, but then take that and just use this little pyramid structure. It's genius.
Yeah, and it does a lot of similar stuff to the Seven Wonders does as well. So if you are familiar with any of the versions, you have cards that let you collect resources. There is an option to win by military. So you have to keep an eye on your opponent and how far they're getting with that military track. There is also science too. So again, if I see Sean's collecting a lot of science, I'm going to make sure I am not opening up any science cards for him. And I must say, though, that again, this is another example where the expansion makes it even better. So for us, the Pantheon expansion, I think really up the game just in general.
Yeah, because I think the one big complaint people had with the original just base game Seven Wonders Duel is sometimes it can feel a little bit like it's on rails, because as you take a card, it like shows 2 cards, and someone takes a card and it shows 2 cards. So you always kind of know what you're going to get, and there's not like as much choice. I don't know if I totally buy into that complaint, but I see it. But Pantheon makes it so you got a different option, so you don't necessarily have to take those 2 cards, and you can kind of throw a wrench in the works and like force slightly different routes. And I think that's great. And I think it is great how they managed to incorporate like all of the bits, like the wonders, the point scoring, the science, the military, everything is in there, and it all kind of feels like original Seven Wonders as well, or like it does in Architects, which is maybe my favorite version, but this is about 2-player only games, and this is the 2-player only version.
And it is our number 3.
Our number 2, we're cheating a little bit here because we're smushing 2 games together, but they're both in the In 20 Minutes series. And these 2 games are Blitzkrieg and Hail Caesar, which are both designed by Paolo Mori. And I believe there's actually a 3rd one coming up, but it's not by him, and I don't really know anything about it. So don't worry about that one. But Blitzkrieg and Hail Caesar are both these terrific games. They use a very similar-ish system. So you've got like chips in this bag, and then you're putting them behind this like secrecy thing.
Screen?
Yes, what regular people would call it is a screen. You're putting them behind a screen, and then you're playing them out onto the 2 different boards. I will stop trying to mush them together. So Blitzkrieg is this World War II game where you're playing out like tanks and boats, and then you're moving these little markers back and forth. So it's a super abstracted World War II game that's like really tight and interesting. And then Hail Caesar is this game where you're surrounding different regions of Rome, and you're Pompey versus Caesar. and you're playing out these chips that are two-sided, and so now they're looking at two different regions, and as you get those regions, you're getting bonus chips and you're fighting for these regions. But both of them are like similar but different, and they're both so worth playing, and we just could not decide which one.
Yeah, we really went back and forwards as to which one to pick, and that's why we are grouping it together. And for both of them, there are restrictions on where your chips can go, and I think that adds a lot as well, because when I'm looking at a theater and I'm like, oh, Sean could win that, but I don't have anything that could go there, then that can make it a little bit tricky. But I think you need that, or else you'll be like, oh, I definitely can go there, so there's no point. Or, you need a little bit of those restrictions. And for both of them, really, one is when you finish off the area control. For Rome, you get a bonus token. But for Blitzkrieg, when you play a chip out, you get the action that you can do. So where you're choosing to go will be who's winning in a theater, if you can influence who's winning, how far it is from that theater closing, but also what action bonus you might want to get from putting your pieces out too.
And when we were arguing about which one, I was a little bit more on the side of Blitzkrieg. And part of that is that it's also flippable. So on the front side, you've got the Allies versus Axis World War II. But on the back side, you've got this like alternate history world where Japan is like invading the US and they're fighting on the different cities. And it's got a Godzilla in it. And it's just... I like that side because it feels a little bit more, it's like a little bit more fun. It's a little bit more silly. And it's cool because you kind of are moving the battles from like city to city as they move around. And that's really fun too. But both are really solid.
Yeah, both games really are. I lean, I think, a little bit towards the Rome one because I'm a bit more interested in older history. But they both work so well as a two-player, head-to-head abstract game. And I think the title's true. I think they do play in about 20 minutes. And it is our number 2. Our number 1 is Fields of Arle, and this is an Uwe Rosenberg farming game that is two-player specific. But just like his other farming games, it is a worker placement game with lots of different worker options and different ways in which you can score points and lots to explore. This one's specifically about peat farming. So you do have a lot of peat that you have to clear out, but it is a full Euro game that only plays at 2, which works out so well for us.
And this is when you're talking about it being like a full game. This fills your table. Like, I don't think you could make this game. We couldn't play 4 at our table with this game. And I love that about this. There aren't enough of these just giant games that work for 2 players. And it does everything you would expect and more. Like, you're traveling around and it feels like a little bit more kind of personal. Like, I think it's about Uwe Rosenberg's actual hometown, and you can like feel a little bit more of that in there. But you're traveling and you're peat mossing, and you got your animals doing it like you always do in an Uwe game, and all of the stuff that you would want. But it also has this really neat back and forth with how the worker placement works, and like you're moving these little markers.
Yeah, so there is a spot that lets you upgrade your actions, and that is really key. And we're always fighting for that spot because what you're doing is you're setting yourself up for future turns. So that means any action that you go later on is going to be stronger. And we've had a lot of fun exploring all the different strategies because that will depend on which ones you make stronger. So you last time went for the S laughter house, as we call it.
Yeah, I did a ton of S laughtering.
And I hadn't tried that one before. So as you're focusing on the different routes, you're going to be upgrading those ones. And I feel like there's still a whole bunch of routes that we haven't even tried yet.
Well, and the cool thing too is that if the other person's using the routes, you kind of can't as well. And all the spaces do something like very unique and specific. And so when the other person starts to take certain spaces, so if they're like collecting hides or they're collecting wood, it kind of means you're not going to do that because you're not going to be able to do the second half of that later on. So you're better off just doing a different thing.
Yeah, you are right. It's going to be a lot easier if I just do something different rather than the competing and trying to vie for those spots. So if I can find an alternative way to go, that is better. And the buildings too, I think, also push you down different routes as well. And so there's just so many options, and to have a full game of the kind of game that we just like to play, specifically for 2 players, is why this is our number 1.
And that is it. That's our 10 current favorite. This changes day to day. But as of right now, today, these are our top 10 current favorite 2-player specific games.
And we know there are some really big ones we're missing because we haven't played all the games. We haven't played Twilight Struggle. We haven't played Watergate. So those are some 2 really popular 2-player games. But please do let us know in the comments what your favorite 2-player games are. And as usual, please like, subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you next time for another game.